At 8:42 p.m., I was still smoothing the edges of a lavender place card Aunt Margaret had pressed with tiny dried flowers. I'm Rachel Carter, 34, a pediatric occupational therapist, and she'd spent 3 straight weekends sewing 6 handmade baby blankets for my younger sister Emily's baby shower because she believed every child deserved something stitched with love. Exactly 16 minutes later, at 8:58 p.m., one notification erased months of quiet effort without warning. 3 weeks later, that same lavender place card would be sitting alone on a rain-soaked patio table, and nobody there could explain how it had ended up there. Here's what Emily didn't understand about that night, or about the years leading to it. Sometimes the smallest empty chair exposes the largest truth a family has spent decades pretending not to see. In my family, seating meant everything long before anyone admitted it. Holiday dinners, birthdays, graduations, even Sunday lunches followed an invisible ranking system. Emily always sat beside whoever mattered most, while everyone else adjusted without complaint. The lavender place cards became our family's symbol of belonging. While she packed the blankets, memories kept arriving faster than I could stop them. Emily asking me to give up my graduation dinner reservation because her friends wanted that restaurant. Emily moving my birthday celebration so it wouldn't interfere with a weekend trip she had planned. Emily introducing me at family gatherings as the practical sister, while she accepted every compliment about being successful, charming, or unforgettable. I had always convinced myself those moments were isolated. Standing beside those handmade blankets, I finally saw they were chapters in the same story. The hardest realization wasn't that Emily had treated me badly. It was admitting I had spent years making excuses that allowed her to continue. I called our mother first. She sighed before I even finished explaining. "Rachel, she's pregnant. Please don't make this into a family issue." Then my father took the phone and added, "You know how emotional Emily gets. Skip this one event. It's not worth damaging relationships." Neither of them asked to see the messages. Neither questioned why only my seat had disappeared after weeks of confirmed plans. Their concern wasn't whether something unfair had happened. It was whether I would quietly absorb it again. The first person who reacted differently was my friend Daniel, who had known me since college. I forwarded him screenshots without adding any explanation. He called within 2 minutes. After a long silence, he said, "Rachel, this isn't about a chair. Someone wanted you to feel small, and they chose the most public way possible. You don't have to keep volunteering for that role." It was the first time anyone had given me permission to stop proving I could endure mistreatment politely. Even then, I wasn't looking for revenge. At 10:41 a.m., I texted Emily one final offer. I told her I didn't need a place at table 2. I would happily stand in the kitchen, refill drinks, help guests find their seats, deliver Aunt Margaret's handmade blankets, congratulate her, and leave before lunch if that made things easier. I promised there would be no uncomfortable conversations and no scene. My message contained exactly 83 words and not a single accusation. Emily replied 4 minutes later. "No. If you show up, security at the venue has your name. Don't embarrass yourself or me. If you force this, don't expect invitations to birthdays, holidays, or anything else. Don't make everything about you." Reading those sentences, I finally understood the seat had never been the real issue. It was simply the latest way of measuring who was considered worthy of belonging. After reading Emily's last message, I stopped trying to negotiate for space inside a system that had already decided my value. I looked at the lavender place card still resting beside Aunt Margaret's gift basket and realized it represented more than a chair. It represented permission to belong. For years, I had been asking other people to hand me that permission. I quietly decided I would never do that again. As I told Daniel later that afternoon, if someone keeps locking the same door, eventually you stop knocking and build another entrance. Even then, I left room for Emily to walk through it if she ever chose to. Instead of spending the afternoon sitting alone in that pub across the street, I reserved 4 picnic tables at the Maple Community Garden for 1:30 p.m. The rental fee was exactly $85, and Daniel covered half before I could argue. Aunt Margaret brought the handmade blankets anyway, saying beautiful work deserved to be seen regardless of who appreciated it. I invited neighbors, two coworkers from the children's clinic, Daniel's parents, and anyone who happened to be free on short notice. When arranging the tables, I deliberately left one chair empty with a Lavender Place card resting on its plate. It carried Emily's name. Not because I expected her to come, but because I wanted the empty seat to represent invitation instead of exclusion. Before telling the family what I was doing, I opened my phone and wrote the message I desperately wanted to send. The first draft read, "Enjoy your perfect party. Maybe one day you'll learn that expensive decorations can't hide an ugly heart." I stared at it for nearly a minute before deleting every word. My second attempt was even harsher. "One day your child will ask how you treated your own sister, and I hope you tell the truth." That one disappeared just as quickly. Neither message reflected the person I wanted to become. The text I finally sent at 12:08 p.m. was only 52 words long. "Emily, I won't be attending today. I sincerely hope your baby shower is joyful and that everyone celebrates this new chapter with you. Aunt Margaret's gifts will be donated where they're appreciated. I wish you and the baby good health." There were no accusations, no hidden insults, and no attempt to win the last word. Emily answered less than 3 minutes later with 2 words that somehow said everything. "Your choice." By early afternoon, the community garden filled with ordinary conversations instead of careful performances. Children chased butterflies between flower beds, someone accidentally dropped a bowl of potato salad, and Daniel's father spent 15 minutes trying to fix a folding chair that never actually needed repairing. Nobody cared whether the tablecloths matched. Nobody measured anyone's importance by where they sat. The most beautiful moment belonged to Aunt Margaret. A young expectant couple visiting the garden recognized the tiny embroidered blankets folded beside her basket. They admired every stitch, asked how long each one had taken, and listened while she explained the meaning behind the hand-sewn initials. When they learned the blankets had no destination anymore, they hesitated before accepting one as a gift for their daughter due in August. Margaret smiled with genuine pride for the first time that day. Watching someone treasure the work Emily had dismissed felt like the quiet ending those blankets deserved. Later that evening, my cousin Olivia called after leaving the baby shower. She described elegant centerpieces, catered desserts, and dozens of carefully posed photographs. Then her voice softened. "It looked beautiful," she admitted, "but it never felt comfortable. People kept whispering about why you weren't there." It was strangely quiet. She never mentioned anyone laughing, dancing, or lingering after dessert. The expensive celebration had looked full, yet somehow felt empty. Driving Aunt Margaret home just before sunset, I realized I hadn't won anything. I had lost the version of my family I had spent years hoping would eventually exist. That grief was real, and pretending otherwise would have cheapened the day. Margaret looked out the passenger window and quietly said, "Sometimes people protect their favorite story even when the truth would heal everyone." Those words stayed with me far longer than Emily's messages ever did. The empty Lavender Place card on our picnic table no longer reminded me of rejection. It reminded me that belonging means very little if it has to be begged for. 3 weeks later, at exactly 4:12 p.m. on a rainy Thursday, Emily knocked on my front door without calling first. Daniel happened to be helping me assemble shelves for the children's therapy books, so he answered and asked her to wait while I finished tightening the last 2 screws. It wasn't meant to punish her. For the first time in my life, I wasn't dropping everything because she had arrived. She stood on the porch for nearly 11 minutes before I invited her inside. She began exactly the way I expected. First came guilt. "Mom hasn't stopped crying." When that failed, she tried reputation. "The whole family thinks this has gone too far." Neither argument landed because neither addressed what had actually happened. Then her shoulders relaxed, and she asked something I had never heard from her before. "Do you really think I became that person?" I answered honestly. "I think you've been rewarded for acting like that person for a very long time." The room stayed quiet for several seconds. Then I told her there was only one thing that mattered now. If she wanted any relationship with me in the future, she needed to apologize directly to Aunt Margaret. Not because of the canceled seat, but because Margaret had spent 3 weekends creating something beautiful that Emily had treated as disposable. This wasn't about repairing my pride. It was about honoring the person who had quietly loved us both without asking for anything in return. Emily didn't argue. She drove straight to Margaret's house that evening. I wasn't present for their conversation, and I never asked for every detail afterward. I only know they sat together for nearly an hour, the handmade blankets still folded neatly beside Margaret's sewing machine. When Emily left, Margaret hugged her at the front gate. Whatever words passed between them belonged to those two women alone, and somehow that privacy made the apology feel more genuine than any speech delivered in front of the whole family. By early autumn, our family gatherings looked different. The Lavender Place cards returned, but no chair carried more importance than another. People simply chose where they wanted to sit. On the first Sunday dinner after everything changed, Emily quietly picked up Aunt Margaret's place card before anyone else arrived and placed it at the center of the table beside the fresh flowers. She didn't announce why. She just smiled softly and stepped back. Margaret had started sewing blankets for newborns at the county hospital instead of waiting for special family occasions. Every blanket carried the same careful stitches and the same belief that every child deserved to arrive in a world where kindness came before status. Watching her prepare another gift no longer reminded me of that canceled baby shower. It reminded me that generosity survives even when gratitude doesn't. The Lavender Place card still sits on a shelf in my living room. Whenever I see it, I remember one simple truth. The people who deserve a seat at your table are the ones who never ask you to earn it. We carried one place card, 6 handmade blankets, and an 11-minute wait through that story. Only to discover that belonging is never decided by the chair someone gives you, but by the table you're willing to build.